Hello and welcome back to First for EPA On Air. We have back with us today JP, and today he's going to talk to us all about EPA presentations. So hello JP, to start with, could you tell us what apprentices should focus on in their EPA presentation?
Probably change the word focus, Tilly, and talk about where we see some of the issues with the presentations and how the apprentices prepare to come to the assessment. The first one is keeping the presentation as simple as possible. We tend to see lots of presentations that have been made and overcomplicated and then hard for the apprentice to follow it or to remember why they put it together in that way. So I think it's really important that they keep it as simple as possible. They utilise bullet points and have a script to follow rather than put all the words onto the slide and read the slide word for word. The assessor can do that automatically when they submit the presentation. So make the most of that session by having an opportunity to expand on what the project report or the project case study or the whatever standard they're doing, it's phrased differently, but they've written that report. So use the opportunity with the presentation to expand on that, elaborate it. You know, we were talking earlier, they've got the opportunity to put other images in there. They've got the opportunity to put graphics of some sort. Use that, bring it to life to explain what they probably can't fit in the word count within the project. If they just repeat what they've done, it's a missed opportunity for them to meet the assessment criteria. So I think they're the fundamentals and maximise that opportunity. Depending on the standard they're on, they've got 10 minutes, 20 minutes to do a presentation. Practice that presentation, practice the length of the presentation, have the right amount of slides. If they come in with 20 slides, they're not going to use all of those slides in the timescale. And the likelihood is, at the end of the presentation, the last 3-4 slides, it's got the key points on, the summary, the bits. If they run out of time, that's a missed opportunity to get that into the conversation. So utilise the time, practice it, do it with somebody, do it with their parents, do it with whoever, but run through it so that somebody else can time it for them and they maximise that opportunity. But it would be wasted if they don't do that and they have slides or information that they can't use. So you know, your point earlier about how do they put it together, it's not always about the images they put in there, text they put in there. Maximise that time and get across what they need to get across. There are far too many occasions in the presentations that they forgot what they put in the presentation. They have duplicated what's in the project. There's nothing wrong in the presentation of referring to the project. So use that opportunity to refer to it, but don't duplicate it. And then where they've probably not had the opportunity to put things into the annex of the project, use the presentation to bring that out and elaborate on what they need to do. And that way, it'll be more beneficial. The other thing in the presentation, I would say, they're given the opportunity at the beginning by the assessor and that all assessors say to them, do you want a time stamp during the discussion? Take that opportunity and say yes. You know, they will say to them, you've now got 5 minutes left or 3 minutes. It saves the apprentice panicking at the end and, I can't get all of these in. So even if they've timed it and they know it's right, still ask for that warning and the assessor's there to help them not trip them up, but there's so many things that we can do, but they have to practice. And if they don't practice it on the day, it usually goes wrong.
Yeah, as you say, practice is key. Obviously, you mentioned a lot about word counts and slide counts and images and everything. Is there a minimum or maximum slide count or word count?
There's not a maximum word count that applies to the project. There's not a maximum slide count. But again, I go back to the point of practice the number of slides you've got, because you can only get so many slides in the timescales that they've got for each assessment. And if they've done it in bullet points and they've got a separate script that they can refer to, as long as the script's electronic, again, as we all know. But practice what they're going to say within there. Usually most people stick to around about 2 minutes per slide. So if you're thinking about, you've got a 10-minute presentation, use that gauge and you'll know exactly how many slides you're probably going to use. You've always got an introduction slide, you've got a summary slide at the end, so they're usually less time than getting your key points across with the others. So just gauge it on the number of slides based on that.
Perfect, thank you. So obviously you mentioned about the project being separate to the presentation. Is the presentation there to emphasise that project in the report, or should they go beyond what's in the project?
No, it's there to emphasise it. And again, they can't, as long as they've complied in the project, as we were talking about in one of the earlier podcasts, they can only write that against the assessment criteria that's prescribed in the assessment plan. So the presentation should support that. Going above and beyond that won't count to anything. So they have to stick within the boundaries of the assessment plan and the assessment criteria. But there's nothing stopping them from emphasising things. And probably one of the biggest things, when they've submitted their project and they've put their presentation in, there's a gap between that timescale and the time they sit and have the discussion with the assessor. Things might have changed in that period of time. So they might have implemented more, or they might have got more output. There's nothing wrong with them adding that at the end of their presentation in their summary to enhance it that way. So yeah, add that bit in, but don't go outside the assessment criteria, because the assessor can't do anything else with that information. So maximise the time you've got based on the assessment criteria.
As you say, with all the practicing and adding things in, is there specific deadlines you have to finish uploading things to? Is there a best way to practice the presentation?
So deadlines in uploading it. Each of the assessment plans have the deadlines, and again, when the ops team send that out to the apprentices to say your assessments are now starting, or you've got this time frame. So again, some people have got, depending on the assessment, the standards they're doing, there's 4 weeks time frames, or there's 8 weeks or 12 weeks. But that's all sent out to them in the beginning. So just make sure you meet that time frame when you submit the evidence, and you're submitting the presentation along with your project report and the mapping document that you referred to. So that's the timescales. In terms of practicing it in the timescales, is there a good way of doing it? Some people will prefer to do it on their own, so fine, practice it on your own, teaching people to suck eggs, but have a clock and time it. Other people prefer to do it with somebody, and I would always say that if you've got a line manager or a mentor at work, it's sometimes worth doing that with them, because they can then question you back the types of things that they're expecting you. So you're not interrupted during your presentation, during that 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or however long you've got per assessment plan. The assessor will ask all the questions at the end. But knowing that timescale, someone being at the end to ask you those questions might say, actually, I've missed something. It's important to get that in the presentation, and it gives them the opportunity to add that into their text or the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got all of our guidance that shows you some example questions you might be asked and lots of different things. But obviously, bearing in mind all of our guidance, is there anything that sort of trips apprentices up with the presentations?
Well, we've been talking about a couple of them there. Not practicing it, running out of time is the big one. And I think if there was one message to get across, it's don't run out of time, and don't leave all your important things to the last slides, because if you do that, you've missed the opportunity to talk about that, and you can't include that into the conversation. So it's really, really important that maximise the slides and get all the key points across. Otherwise, we've said it it is a wasted opportunity for the individuals.
Yeah, and I know you've probably just covered this, but come out of your head of EPA position head and go into being an apprentices coach. What is that key advice that you would give apprentices?
So don't try and do anything that you wouldn't do normally. And what I mean by that is stick to the language you would typically use. So if they've got abbreviations in there, that's fine. They might get asked to explain what they are afterwards. But if that's the way they typically present, if that's the terminology they use, if they're the tools that they use in the workplace, use them. Don't change something at the last minute, because it will trip them up. And if they try and change that, it all goes wrong. So language is key. And even if something goes wrong during the discussion, don't worry about it. Apologise, just move on. But don't dwell on it, okay? The minute you do that, everything else cascades. So the assessors are there again to just say, okay, look, that's gone wrong. If there's a technical fault, the assessors will take that into consideration. They might say to them, right, we're giving you an extra minute if you lost the connection or whatever. Take that opportunity. Don't panic about it, but really keep it as simple as possible. I think the other one, when we talk about testing, practicing, understand and practice with the actual platform you're going to use. So we have people that use GoTo or Zoom or Teams. If they're not used to that they've presented on, get someone to book a meeting on it. Practice how it uses. Practice they can share their screen. Practice they know how to present on that shared screen. And practice that they can get their notes up and still see the screen to be able to navigate through it. If they haven't practiced that part, so the technology alongside that, and that goes wrong on the day, that it becomes harder for them. So if I was their coach now, the one thing I would be doing is not just practice the presentation, it's set it up as you would do it for real, get the live technology, the PC you're going to use, the microphone, everything, and run through it properly. And nothing then can go wrong on the day.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, apprentices are nervous especially. Is there any way that if the apprentice does mess up in their presentation, they can go back? Or is it that the assessor takes what is said?
No, that's part of the discussion. So if something doesn't make sense during a presentation, or if something's gone wrong, or if something doesn't make sense, that the assessor is able to then, between the project and the presentation, speak to the individual and say, can you give me some more information on that? Or can you emphasise this area? Or you were talking about this, but can you go into more detail? So again, they're not there to trip them up, they're there to support them. But they will go by the evidence that's in front of them. They have to be factual in what they do. So if they haven't heard it, they will ask a question if they're looking for it. And if they've heard part of it, they will ask them to expand on it. So again, I guess my point to, and this is from an EPA point, not from a coach's point of view, is to say to the candidate, you might be asked a question that you think you've been asked multiple times. Don't think you got it wrong. What the assessor is trying to do is get them to expand on that. And that might be because they've answered the pass criteria, but they haven't met the distinction criteria. So they're trying to get them to broaden the answer or to give them a bit more detail. So don't sit there going, oh, I've probably got that wrong. You haven't got it wrong. They're just looking for some more detail to try and get you to a higher grade.
Perfect. Thank you, JP. I think that was really insightful into EPA presentation.
I think that sums it up, Tilly, and I think more than happy to come and have another conversation with you if you would like to do it in more detail. We get any more questions from there. But for now, I think if people are willing to listen to this and they take the good parts away from it, they'll all have a better experience in the endpoint assessment. So I thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you, JP. Thank you for joining us.